John and Murray were probably the major writers in terms of bulk and volume, because they were quite established sketch writers by then. I think they'd done stuff for In One Ear on radio, they'd done Spitting Image, Radioactive, and so they were used to churning out a fair amount of material. Obviously there was a lot of Don and George from them, but they did Stony Bridge. And then Pete would obviously do the music. Moira would write all her little girl monologues, other characters and sketches. God and Pete probably didn't write as much at that time, although there was the occasional sketch from them. And then extracting some out of John Sparks, which is, was an art in itself. John had a number of characters that he did on the circuit, from Gwyn and Frank Horbison. And basically he preferred to write those character parts, and he invented Denzil and Gwynedd, which were one of my favourites actually. But it was a real pulling teeth job to get a weekly Denzil and Gwynedd sketch, because John was very meticulous about his writing, and it was gag a line and so on. So you'd get a wonderful 2.5-minute sketch, but you'd have to literally force him into it, or build the set is what I used to do, and say, well, you've got to put something in it, John, and it does a set.
Yeah, he was new. Denzil was never a stand-up character. He wouldn't have worked as a stand-up. And he was loosely based, anyway, having said at some point that they're all internal. Mind, he was internal as well, it's got to be, but loosely based on Next Door Neighbour, who which is a bit camp, and the Next Door Neighbour is that's how he talked. But he also was a DIY fanatic. His garden was full of sheds which he'd built, and the sheds were filled with shed building tools. So it's a kind of a circuitous kind of thing. The sheds were full of, which came first, the shed building tool or the shed? It was like that. And I remember when I got a motorbike when I was about 17, I got a little motorbike, but I hadn't quite got the hang of riding it. I mean, I didn't fall off, but you're supposed to stop the kind of the throttle when you change gear, and I wasn't doing it. So he came jumping out of his house. Says, John, I said, no, what do you want to do? I know that I didn't want the bike. Let me just say, give me the bike. Give me the bike. I just say, and he got on the bike, and he was away down the road. And I didn't see him again.
Ever.
No, Gwynedd. No, it did not collapse. It's a reclining chair with just made.
No, Gwynedd. Now that's just, you see, because just before we were going to start recording, we'd been rehearsing it. But Wen wanted to know, what's the character like then? What are you expecting of this character?
I really didn't know what John wanted, and because John's sketches were coming quite late, if at all, day of the show sort of thing, sometimes, or day before the show. I remember standing with him. The audience we were in the costumes. I just remember standing at the side of the set and just saying, I don't know what voice you want me to do.
So I said, well, she said, well, it's a bit like that, tell you. Woo, hello, it's a bit like that.
So I do a falsetto because that's what John.
And within half a second, she'd got the entire character just there perfectly, fully formed. Extraordinary.
Gwynedd, you've got a crumb on your lip.
Oh, thank you, Denzil. Denzil?
Yeah?
You have got sausage on yours.
My friends Nan was watching Denzil and Gwynedd one time, and they went, oh, what have they done to her this week? Oh, she doesn't get the parts, does she? And I know there was definitely, people felt a bit sorry for me. And actually with Gwynedd, it was a monster, really. There was one, I think it was the pipe bomb. I'm sitting smoking a pipe, and I'm wearing pop socks. someone said to me, did they do that? I went, what? The legs? I thought they meant the pipe, you know, the old pipe effect. I wanted the legs. What do you mean, how did they do the legs? Those prosthetic legs. They were amazing. I mean, I looked like I had 2 sausages coming out of a toilet roll. Just pop socks and there's like acres of pink, kind of mottled flesh coming out of the pop sock. Good look, ladies. But Sparks, you know, just said this is how I wanted to look. I mean, he's very prescriptive with his writing, John, and he said I'd like it to look like this, and Denzel's going to look like that. And then again, Christine Kant, the genius of Christine Kant, sort of with a hairnet and a bit coming out the front and big eyebrow. She stuck on 2 moustaches, my eyebrows, two Poirot's moustaches or something. And then we did, you know, the nice bit of mascara and the lipstick. Gwyneth always making an effort, and the teeth. Yeah, me and John Sparks went to the dentist to get the teeth fitted, and it's quite an elaborate and slightly frightening process getting your teeth done. And the dentist goes, "Oh well, what do you want from these teeth?" And Sparks went, "I want them like brown, sort of big and wrong and mangled up." And the dentist went, "Oh, very funny," and had the very teeth we were talking about, quite extraordinary.
Stony Bridge!
You take up the story. Pete owned a company, tape tracks.
Oh, God.
More notes for less notes.
Wait, is that really it?
Slogans are us.
One of the great slogans.
Which provided backing music for corporate and sell-through.
And I got this gig in that was,
Yes.
It was basically Edinburgh. Lots of pictures, and it had to be soundtrack, but the narration was fantastic.
But before the guy who'd made the video got a voiceover guy to do it, he did the guide vocal. And he had an unfortunate voice. Edinburgh! And so we just had the idea that we would do a promotional video for a very, very small, insignificant town.
Stonybridge, described by Sir Walter Scott as Stonybridge.
The Stonybridge video was shot.
Yeah, well, again, it was a low budget kind of show. Low budget show, so Gordy and I just went up to Scotland and took all the photographs ourselves.
And we went one day, we got on a plane, went up one day, I borrowed my mother's car and we drove around because we knew roughly what we were looking for. So we drove to the village of Breich in Midlothian, which is the most remarkable. It was a town that was so dull they couldn't be bothered to build the other half of it. I mean, it's only a half of the road. There's a main road and it's just on one side of the road. The other side of the road is just this field that can't be hard. And then the town where I was brought up, a place called Tranent in East Lothian, was very proud in its civic square, which had a clock in it, which became the Stonybridge clock, which had won a prize. And I'd always remembered laughing every time I went past it. And then there was the actual Stonybridge, which was at Warriston near the crematorium, which no longer exists.
Stonybridge!
We also went and got pictures out of family albums, so that's why John's father and mother and my mum and dad looking like someone at the B-52s, as I remember.
It was lo-fi productions, did it ourselves.
But that's how the first one came about.
And so again, that's a classic example of, it was just going to be one sketch. Here's the video with the stupid voice.
Stonybridge!
Mr. Doherty's voice in the promotional video.
It's video!
It was almost like dog whistle level of high pitch.
Stonybridge!
Series 1 was the first one, and people started quoting it back to us a lot. So you'd hear Stonybridge a lot.
But it went very well, and we thought, okay, well, let's see the guys behind this.
The council is now in safe hands and shall remain so!
Gordy was Brucey, became the kind of leader and rather officious and
The King Butcher.
bumptious and you know, talked too much. And
Nothing like Gordy in real life.
and actually that's the only character. Everybody else just did the stupid voice.
Stonybridge.
Apart from John Sparks, who was very realistic.
I've got a surprise! A dirty Vigo!
Stonybridge became a soap opera, really, and what I really liked about it was the fact that the characters became more and more developed and they did crazier things.
I have been declared king by the powers invested in me on account of my size. Oh, I wonder what this is. Oh, that's right, it's a throne.
like a throne to me, Erch.
What are you doing, commoners?
We are refusing to recognise the throne.
It sort of got out of hand, I think, so, which didn't it really?
When do you think it jumped the shark?
It certainly jumped the shark when they recorded a charity single.
Put a sock in it, will you?
I was right to the end.
It looked suspiciously like Tutti Frutti to me.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the last sketch of the show.
I'm being artistically compromised here, and I quit!
Murray.
Murray, yes. You're the one that goes on and on and on. Gilgooley?
Callum Gilhooly, that's right, yes.
Yes, I wrote the very first Callum sketch for a stage show, which was just based on a guy who'd come round to our flat and at the wrong time, day or night, and you know, hassle us.
Aye, we'll start with this lot, John, here. Now, that's the whole car, right? Brilliant, eh? Right. And that's the sunroof. Which is brilliant too. Especially when the sun's out, like. Yeah, and that's, what is that? I can't quite. Oh, aye, that's the ignition. See, you put the key in there, and that starts it up, like, And there's a few different angles, actually.
Perhaps I should explain it at this stage. This thing is Callum Gilhooly. Now, I played Subbuteo with Callum when I was 7. And I can't seem to get rid of him.
Stage piece, did it on the television, worked very well, and then we decided to keep going with it. And then thereafter, Murray wrote most of them.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant.
Where did you get Callum from?
I don't know, I just, well, maybe it was just within me, that's the tragic part of it. You know, I always wonder why Joan said you were playing this one, by the way.
But fortunately, I had a lively, independent mind and soon developed an interest in anoraks, which has stood me in anoraks ever since.
It was one of the few times I think I've ever actually got into a part in terms of being in a character, you know, normally.
But again, he became a great bucket for also comic ideas.
Like Jehovah's or something like that.
Yes.
Hello. We'd like to talk to you for a couple of minutes, if that's all right.
Aye, no bother.
I'm sure you must be very busy, but we'd like to talk to you about our God and how we think that if you accept him into your life, you will be much happier.
Sounds really interesting. Aye, brilliant. And then I'll tell you how your life could be better if you got a Suzuki 350. Walk everywhere.
Yes. But it also depends a lot on who the straight men were, you know. And what everyone did a good turns is that Gordy was especially good at being frustrated by.
Hello, North-South Airlines. Can I help you? I'd like to book a flight, please. Where are you going, sir? I'm going to see Gavin, my mate. Where does Gavin live, sir? 47 Manor Park.
But the other thing was the one that never worked was when he hassled Wen. And we sort of thought afterwards, oh, it shouldn't have been a woman, you know, it should have just been...
They got a bit creepy.
Yeah, you got into stalker territory sort of thing.
How's it going so far?
Oh, you know, fine, I'm following the route.
I owe you an apology, by the way.
I accept it.
Because you know you said you wanted the quickest route?
Yes.
Well, this isn't it. Because, like, if you go second right and then first left, it's quicker, and it's one less corner to remember.
Second right, first left. Gotcha.
And you owe me an apology, by the way.
I give it.
There's something creepy about it.
And that one where he raped the nun, we never even showed that one.
No, that's right. And they didn't even take his anorak off or anything.
I wrote the little girl monologue for the pilot.
Yes! I do know what death is. Death is when you can't see anything ever again anymore, ever. You can't see and you can't hear because everything is gone all black and you don't know what is happening inside your head because it's gone with the angels.
And then the first one I remember writing in my little kitchen in this flat in Surrey Quays, and I think I might have recorded it. I think I just spoke into a tape recorder for the first one, and then I sort of transcribed it afterwards. And it was sort of, it was a bit like automatic writing. It was just sort of...
So it was improvised?
Yeah, improvised, exactly. They just came out. And then I, later in the series, I just developed a way of, I think of a topic, and then I just go, right, that's it. I'll sit and write for 10 minutes on that topic and see what comes out.
Yes, I do know what happens when you go to the dentist. You go with your mum and you sit in a brown room what smells like a cough sweep what has fallen down the toilet.
I didn't have any sense of it being a real child. I just remembered what it was like, and it didn't seem that different how I thought. No, in fact, I just used to think, well, I'll just write down how I think things work, like aeroplanes or the monarchy, and if you take away the kind of sophistication of language, you know, a kind of an adult way of speaking, that's basically how I used to think, and how I would sort of, you know, kind of puzzle over how things actually work.
Then the lady does come and get you and says it is time to go in a special tiny room, and there's a big chair in it, what is looking like a bed but has no blankets, and it has got electric in it, and it will kill you if you cry.
But I sort of always wanted her to be slightly, not exactly a deprived child, but just sort of slightly sort of reduced circumstances, which is partly, I suppose, to do with my upbringing, but that I think there was quite a lot of pressure on me at certain points, outside pressure, never from any of the people in the core group of Absolutely, to make it cuter and to make it more palatable, because it was deemed a bit creepy and a bit depressing at certain points, and I really resisted that.
And then the dentist does smile and he says, "Do not be frightened, please, thank you, for I'm only going to have a look, for heaven's sake." And then you must open your mouth really wide enough for a puppy to go in. And then he does bend over and you can see right up his hairy nose. And skin does fall out of his hair onto your jumper. And his mouth does smell all pooey. And his teeth are brown but with shiny bits in them, but this is all right because he is the dentist.
And I remember sort of performing them in the room, and really just the kind of the hysteria growing amongst, you lot, as I would say something more stupid, and I was stupidly encouraged by that.
That is what happens when you go to the dentist. It's true.
That was the first sort of bona fide musical character that I had, and that was just based on. There was a show called Kick Up the 80s, and there was Richard Stilgoe, who was a terrible at piano. And it was all sort of Mrs. Thatcher's in a bit of a predicament, and if you've got bad breath, you might have to ligament. And it was all that sort of
crap.
Yeah.
Salicious, sericious, speditious. You probably don't know what they mean.
It was all so pompous and horrible. And also I've got a total pathological hatred of musical comedy and anything to do with...
There's a certain type of performer. And there was a few around in the circuit at the time who would do a song, and there was a certain... And I think Stilgoe had that sort of smugness.
Smugness, I think, is the word, isn't it?
The dipping of the head and... and so we just now and then come up with, let's just sing clever.
Clever, I'm frightfully clever. Oh, perspicacious rhymes with voracious.
But like a lot of the other Absolutely sketches, once it began to work, we started trying other things with it, and Alan Nixon used it as a sort of like linking device.
Andante, I'm singing Andante. You probably don't know where I live.
Then it just got sillier and sillier, and then I started doing all that sort of piano-y stuff. too silly.
When I lived in Oxford, for a while I had a job as a social services ambulance driver, and so Bert was very loosely based on one of the old people that we had to go and collect and take from one place to another place. He was like, oh dear, and he said, my legs are bad, my legs are shocking there, take me to the river, throw me in, drop me in the river, all that. And he had a walking frame, and the other thing he had was a wife who hated him. And he'd come home, we'd bring him home, and the front door would be locked, and there'd be some sort of set to where we had to persuade his wife to unlock the door to let him in. So God knows what he was up to with that woman, that she didn't want him coming in, because he could hardly move.
I showed her me bum the other day. She pretended she didn't like it, but I could see her licking her lips. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get the legs of me Zimmer frame down inside the legs of her knickers, and then, when I'd got her where I wants her, I'd touch her on the quim. The women likes that. They loves being touched on the quim.
Filth, again, you see. But filth and old age, filth and decrepitude. You can see my obsessions, can't you, really?
Yes. Ah, shut your bloody gob.
The first thing that we wrote together, which was through sort of improvisation, imagine it if you can, will you, was the Queen cricket that Murray did, where you felt the balls of the...
Yeah.
But it was great fun to do because we all everyone put massive brushes and pipe.
Yeah, well that was
in the front of the trousers.
because I turned up dressed as the Queen, and so as I went along, and actually did tweak.
Yeah.
And also, in my head, I was going, I'm going to really tweak hard because they can't laugh. So I'm going to. And then they
head of the
countered
it. And I remember I had 2 shoe brushes and a very long swisher for cleaning the laundry out. So I was very well endowed, if a little brushy.